Hey, how's it going? All right, so this is going over my ADB stuff for developing for GearVR. This is a little bit more advanced ADB, so I'm not going to explain every single little thing, but I just want to show you what's possible to work kind of fast and kind of clean. So here we are, Samsung Galaxy phone. I'm going to do a little VR development on this. I'm going to plug it in by USB. Now, you can do this wireless, and for a long time I did, but the issue I run into is that transferring the files wirelessly, the APK file to the phone directly, is extremely slow. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to show you some of that stuff a little bit later. But first, let's get into what we're going over. This is basically a toolkit for developing and GearVR stuff. So ADB is the first little toolkit I got, and I have ADB wireless in here. I'll just show you this in case you need to use wireless. This is a script that if you type ADB wireless in your command prompt supports grep, it'll go in, connect to it wirelessly, and then go into the phone itself to find the IP address. That's this line here. And then connect to your phone as a nice little one-liner. So basically you would just run that script ADB wireless after plugging into your phone, and you connect over wireless. However, for this, we're gonna just stay plain old wired USB for that fast transfer speed. This is a use case where you're building something to the phone and you would just want to test it. You want to test your GearVR game as quickly as possible. Right here, you're going to enable the GearVR developer mode essentially and test right on the device. Okay, so once the device is plugged in, you go into Unity, you build an APK. So once you have your APK, the second thing is transferring that to the phone. I'm going to use a different script for that. Under GearVR, Danceverse, and I've got 3 scripts: config, report, and ship. So let's look at ship first. Now, ship is actually 2 parts. It calls a configuration file. And the trick to this is I have several different projects that kind of use the same scripting, and so I moved all the scripting configuration into its own file. So basically it's this file here. Now, this file contains a lot of stuff to configure these scripts. Everything from the type of mode it is, like the local mode, if you're going to push it to the phone. The script can also push it to the Oculus platform. Same script. In here you define the APK, the app. I pulled the secret out for now, but just glossing over this stuff, this is the configuration file. So once the configuration file is set up, this script calls it in. And since we're doing a local test here, the first thing it's going to do is install ADB right to ADB. Excuse me, it's going to use ADB to install the APK to the phone. Pretty ridiculous. But that's what we're doing here. And then once that's done, it's basically going to start Logcat. So in this case, I have an APK ready to go right here. And we're just going to try this. So ship dev. And it's going to do a few things. So first, it's taking the APK file and copying it directly to the phone. Now, like I said, I was doing this over wireless, but wireless takes like 5 minutes. This is already done. That sound plays when it's finished. So now that beginning of main thing that just popped up here, this is starting up our Logcat. So on the device over here, I'm going to go into my game and run it. It shows up nice and conveniently. Now you see this thing starts spinning a little bit in just a second here. Like so. Now here's the log that comes up for Logcat. I mean, it's kind of a lot to just like continue to look at, but essentially what you're looking for, and this is documented on the Oculus website, is the frames per second all across the board there. Now you can keep looking at this and get a general idea of the performance of your application by reading these metrics that continue to come through. I'm just going to cancel this out. So this is the traditional. We'll go ahead and just have a look at the log itself. So if you type in ADB logcat -s, this is going to sort through it, and it's going to give me back the tags that I want. So I want the Unity tag, because I have it right in some Unity stuff, and I want the VR API tag. The VR API is going to give you basically your frames and stuff like that, along with some other stuff. So if you type that in, this is giving me the running process of what's going on. This app is still running on the phone, and it's just basically giving me a fresh line of feedback every time, showing me how it's running. All right, so let's continue to run that for a minute. It's collecting some good data. There's a Logcat file that continues to build now. So what I'm going to do is just take my device and shut it off. So now the log is like stopped basically as far as that goes. So I'm canceling out of Logcat. All right, so that's a lot of data. So this is where script 2 comes in. And what script 2 is, it's called the report. This file right here basically says it's going to go in, it's going to call the configuration file to load up the paths. And then it's going to do ADB logcat-d, which is a dump. It's going to take that log, but it's also going to use the tags I passed it for Unity and VR API. It's going to pass it to a Windows command called find string. And then it's going to find the lines that have SPF equal. Now the lines that we care about as far as performance are all going to have SPF equal in it. So I use that as basically a regular expression to find that little chunk of text. When it finds that, it's going to grab just those lines out of the log and it's going to dump them into a temporary file log called whatever your APK is .log. So in this case, danceverse.log. So let's have a look at what this produces. So report. Using a report. Now when we run this file, it's giving me basically this little line right here. And what it tells me is how long the log has gone for approximately, how many samples it has, and then the averages. So the frames per second, out of all the frames we could have possibly had in a perfect scenario, if it really ran 60 frames per second every single time, you know, we're going to take that as a metric and then we look at how many frames we actually got. So sometimes it's like 30 frames when it first loaded or 0 frames. Say you get this percent. So out of all the frames, we've got about 90.85% of them covered. And then you've got tear and stale. Now these things you can look up on the Oculus website. They have a great guide to all this stuff. Just basically Google search for the VR API and type VR API Oculus, and I'm sure the docs will come up, but it'll tell you what all these mean. So what's kind of nice about this is as this runs, I can continue to run this report, and you can see it's just basically looking at the logcat we already captured and says, okay, what you've got, this is your report. Now this is where it kind of gets interesting, is that one, a huge savings, I don't have to sit there and parse that log with my eyes at this point because there's no major problems. Second, if we take the phone now and turn it back on, we'll go back into Danceverse. Now, while this is playing, you'll notice that this camera just keeps rotating. What I've coded in Unity is basically a container that wraps around the camera, and it just continuously rotates the camera in a circle. I haven't finished it yet. It's going to rotate the other way too. So this is representing the player moving their head. So you don't have to sit there and do this as much and move the phone. It just kind of rotates for you. So as it's doing this, it's actually collecting, Logcat's collecting data. So if we go back here and we run the report again, it's going to go through, grab Logcat, and basically do all the parsing and filtering in the background, and then give us like simple statistics. So I can let this run for like 5 or 10 minutes, walk away, come back, run the report. It parses the logs, it does the math, and it gives me percentages back. And if your app's working right, something I've noticed is that, for example, your frames per second will start to continue to go up. Your tear, your stale should continue to go down, and your temperature is going to go up a little bit over time, of course. That's the average temperature represented, so that's what that is. One more thing to note about this too is that when this is finished spinning, you can turn the phone off. That's going to stop the logging a little bit. Once all this is finished, if I want to do the entire thing from scratch again, this original command here, ship dev, actually contains a line in it right here for ADB logcat C. That's going to flush the old log to get a fresh copy, and then it's going to start logging new again with the logs we want it to do. So that's basically how that goes down. And I think that is going to be it for this tutorial, essentially. So, oh, actually, sorry, I forgot to cover the filter. Of course, so let's open that up. So the filter is stored under the PowerShell. Now, I'm traditionally like a Unix programmer. I'm from, you know, like the Mac, web development, Linux world. So PowerShell is just not on my radar for a while, but the more I've been using PC, it kind of, to get things done on this, I could install web servers and all this other crazy stuff to use the tools I'm used to, but I just kind of dug into PowerShell and it's working. PowerShell is getting it done. So shout out to PowerShell. Let's have a look at this script real quick. Now this is something I kind of hacked together last night. Learned PowerShell from YouTube, so here we go. Let's have a look at this code. Now it's kind of garbage code. I'll admit it's the first. I haven't refactored this or anything. I just slapped it together. But what it's doing is basically pulling in the log file that we wrote, and it's hard coded in here. You'd have to change that, but and then to skip a lot of detail, generally what it's doing is it's pulling in the file, and then it's looking at it and saying, all right, for every single line on the file, look for VR API, and if you find it, then start parsing it. So the first thing over here, it handles the FPS parsing. And this is a lot of just like string manipulation. I'm splitting stuff, I'm recombining things, I'm splitting it. And I do this continuously down here. So temperature, stale, memory usage, it's all just the same kind of patterns of splitting things and extracting things. Down here, there's a little bit of math that goes on. And again, you know, like I just wrote this real quick, so don't spam me with my terrible code. I know I could improve, but guess what? It works, and that's really what counts here. So this is a calculate now the percentage for the tear, the percentage for the FPS, percentage for the memory. And then down at the bottom over here, there's a function for the time. And the time function, basically, it's an estimate, essentially. So there's about, each of those little ticks, between ticks is about a second. So it's taking each of the ticks, it's assigning them a second, and then it's dividing them by 60 to give you like an approximate in the minutes. And then after that, down here, a more accurate metric is the actual samples, and it tells how many times that little log ticked for each of these things. And then at the very end, it renders out the view, which gives us what we were looking at over here a minute ago, where it shows the report. Something I want to note real quick is if you're going to get into this kind of stuff, now PowerShell is brand new to me, so I didn't know about some of these tools. So just quick shout out to PowerShell ISE. This is something we really can't see right now, but PowerShell, go ahead and Google that. ISE is basically an editor that lets you edit script on top and then have a command prompt on bottom. So it's like a real quick way to work. If I was better with OBS, I'd show that right now, but I'm sorry, I'm learning OBS. So anyway, download that to edit these kind of shell scripts, or of course you can just edit them right here, and you can execute them by typing PowerShell space script name. So hopefully this has been a mind-expanding tutorial about not ODB, sorry. I always think old dirty bastard when I say that. I can't take it seriously. OBS is what I meant. So back to the focus here. We've got Logcat working. We're now capturing Logcat and parsing Logcat using a PowerShell script, so we can get these one-off one-liners, so we can get like a quick snapshot of what's the performance like on this. And so what I'm using this for is I have to flesh out a lot of levels for a lot of scenes, and the way we're building them is we kind of flesh out the environment first. And the first thing I need to do is make sure that environment runs properly at the right speed for VR. So I can sit there with the headset and put it on my head and look around and try to get some of that data, and it does work, and I always do that in the end. But if I can run this script against it, I can get a lot of good, almost automated testing done and get a lot of these statistics by just sitting here and like running a report file while the game plays. So just to show that real quick, let's go back to these bat files here. So we got bat. Now I got other stuff for HTML and stuff like that in here, but bat, dance verse, and then we'll go to report. So this is a report based on the last log captured. Now keep in mind, while this thing is spinning, it's logging. So I can sit here and just hit up enter and get a fresh copy of that report. So now it's saying, okay, it's actually at 99.3% at 153 samples. And it continues 160 samples. So I'll set this up and it just continues to spin, and I'll walk away, get a drink, get a snack, do something, get data out of this thing. And then when I'm done, you know, I get these kind of quick metrics, and I can say, okay, that scene works pretty well. Let's go to the next scene. And so you can also stitch the entire game together, run the thing, and then just get like an overall metric of how the thing's doing. So hopefully this wasn't necessarily like a hold your hand guide. This is more like, hey, look what's possible, and you can pause the video and kind of steal some of this code. You're more than welcome to it. If you have any questions, just go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'll do what I can to try to answer some of this stuff. This is kind of like sysadmin type stuff, so you'll notice like I got some greps going on in a bat file, and because I'm using Commander for some stuff, so there's some weirdness in here, but it's all on Google. And like I said, just leave it in the comments. I'll try to help you out. So hey, hope this is helpful to you. 2 cents here is automate the crap out of everything you can in game development, because there's just not enough time. There really isn't. So this is one way to do it. ADB, Logcat, filtering, getting your simple metric by pressing one button and having it pop up on the screen. I like to know 95.2% of my frames are okay. Hopefully your frames are running well too, and we'll catch you next time. Peace out. Now, where the hell is the stop button on this thing? Ah!